Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you all hear me? That's good. Right, the observant among you will notice that Barry Lejeune isn't here this evening. He sends his apologies. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Graham Miller, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the Friends and deputising for Barry this evening. Though Barry isn't here in person, he is here in spirit because he's given me his parish notices, without which, of course, no meeting of the Friends would ever be complete. So I'll quickly take you through them. First of all, the usual one, the fire alarm. If the fire alarm should go, the fire exit is at the back there or here at the side by me, and follow the instructions of the duty museum staff. Hopefully also you have all received your copy of the latest Friends magazine, which will about to drop through your letterbox if it hasn't already done so. So that's good too. Right, so forthcoming events just very quickly. After tonight, our next gathering is Tuesday the 15th of November in the lecture theatre at the depot at Acton, starting at 2 o'clock, when John Parking will be giving a presentation, a photographic presentation of London Underground in pictures covering the past 50 years. And it's recommended, you must book for this meeting because there are less spaces at Acton than there are here. There'll be the usual tea and coffee, and the Friends shop will be, I'll get a quick plug in, will be open at 1 o'clock, so it'll be your last chance to shop there before Christmas. Next meeting here is 4 weeks today, on Monday the 26th of November at 6:15, when Mike Horn will be talking about 150 years of the District Line. As you know, the District Line officially celebrates that on Christmas Eve this year. And next year there will be a series of events on the District Line, so this will be a good talk to get us in preparation for that. And again, booking is advised for that meeting. Friday the 14th of December, if you haven't booked for the Christmas lunch on the Severn Valley Railway, bad news, I'm afraid it is fully booked. So that one's gone. And then there will not be, of course, a meeting in December, but the next meeting will be Monday the 28th of January here in the Cubic Theatre, when Christian Woolmer will be coming to talk to us about the is advised for that meeting. Finally, in the notices, outside there are copies of the commemorative book for the renaming of the Sherlock Holmes London Underground, A Tale of Two Locomotives, available today at a discount price of £3. It is usually £4. I just checked with John. It will be on sale outside afterwards? Apparently not. Okay. That's not a problem because there are some at the Friends shop down at Acton, so if you miss it today, you can get it on November the 15th. Okay. And now, it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Martijn Gilbert, who is known to many of you, who is here this evening to talk about Titans, Tigers and Lions, my journey through the world of transport. I've got to build you up a bit more, yeah? Okay, actually, Martijn started his career in transport in the murky depths of London Underground scheduling. And for those of you who doubted it, London Underground does have a schedule, but it doesn't always go. But after 2 years, he sort of thought he needed to see the light of day and left to set up his own bus company down in Surrey, Thames Travel. Thames Bus, I'm sorry. Tell you what, shall I put my glasses on and then I can read it. Thames Bus, which after a very successful first year, he sold to Centro. And from there, his career has gone from strength to strength, occupying a number of positions. First of all, within Centro, then at Tellings Golden Miller. From there, he went to Arriva Trains, where he was road transport manager. So I think that's quite an interesting job title at Arriva Trains. Or says something about the amount of engineering works that they undertake at weekends. Then he went on to Yorkshire Tiger, Reading Buses, where many of you will have met him with that very successful, enjoyable visit. And then earlier this year, he was promoted to his current role of MD at Go Ahead North East, including East Yorkshire Motor Services as well. We mustn't forget them. It's a big job. It's one of the sort of main employers in the North East. It carries 75 million passenger journeys a year and operates 700 buses across Newcastle, Sunderland and Durham. So hopefully you will join me in giving Martijn a very warm welcome.
Great, thank you, Graham. I'm just going to make sure can everybody hear me okay? Is the technology working? Wonderful. It's a real pleasure for me to come and talk to you at something as august as the London Transport Museum, something that from when I was probably this high, I used to be regularly brought here by my mother to see the delights of transport, because for me, transport is something I'm very passionate about. I'm the first person in my family to drive a car, so we went everywhere on the bus and train. And that, combined with an interest in business and economics as well, is probably why I'm doing what I'm doing today. But yes, thank you for the introduction. It wasn't Centro, sadly, the West Midlands Passenger Transport Executive. It was Centrap, but I'll tell you all about that as we go through the slides. But as I say, a real pleasure and honour to be here this evening and to be talking to such a packed room. When John Cately asked me to come and talk to you, I was, of course, the Chief Executive of Reading Buses. You're very organised, so your diary plans over a year in advance. And so I'm in a little bit of a hybrid situation this evening because, as Graham rightly said, for the past just 9 weeks, I've been in post as the Managing Director of Go North East up in Newcastle, where I set off on my journey down here just after lunch today, coming a lot further than I anticipated when I signed up to come and talk to you when I was just down the road in Reading. But of course, many of you came on the Friends visit to Reading Buses early on this year, and the plan really was for this talk to sort of echo some of the things that you saw when you were down in the depot at Reading. So not really going to talk much about Go North East today because I haven't been there really long enough to give much of an insight into where we're going. But there are some bits about it, but predominantly I will be talking about, as John's asked me to, John Cately, my career, as to how I've got to where I am, and also Reading Buses, which I know a lot of you were really interested in when you came down to Great Knowles Street Depot early on this year. So without further ado, first of all, it isn't a spelling mistake. I do have a J in my name. When these slides will work, I will tell you all about that as well. There we go, wonderful. So yes, Dutch spelling of my first name. I'm not even Dutch. I was born in St Peter's Hospital, Chertsey. Spent most of my early younger years in and around northwest Surrey, but then moved to South Essex, to Thurrock, when I was 13. So most of my friends and probably the area that I identify with as home is actually in South Essex. But it's a silent J. If you want to know why I have a Dutch spelling on my first name, I've got Dutch godparents. How on earth have I ended up with Dutch godparents? You need to buy me a pint over a pub to get a full story on that one. But as I just said, I am the first person to drive, and I went everywhere on public transport. It's something I'm exceptionally passionate about. It's been great to be able to build a career in our profession. I'm now in my 18th year. I started very young, and I'm older than I look. But yes, for me, yes, but it is a career. I mean, it's great having an interest in something that you do, and it really, really is, I think, massively motivating and empowering to be fortunate enough to work in something that you enjoy. But it is a business, and you'll hear a lot of the things that I talk about as we're going along are actually, the real hard nuts and bolts of what we have to do as a public transport profession, moving people, and with businesses, we've got to make money. But that doesn't mean that we should be shy or afraid of celebrating our interest in what we do as well. So I will stand here this evening proudly as a route master owner as well. So there we go. So RMC 1510, if any of you have seen it out and about, that is mine as well. Had it for a couple of years now. But yes, really delighted to have joined Go Ahead, but I have only been there since the end of August, so it's very new to me. So as I say, most of the talk, Reading Buses, and of course many of you came on the visit there earlier on this year. But first of all, just a little bit about Go North East, because that is the position I now hold and stand here before you this evening in. We have over 700 buses, a team of over 2,000 colleagues, and we deliver over 175,000 journeys every day. And yes, it serves the cities of Newcastle, Durham, Sunderland, but also across Northumberland, the wider Tyne and Wear area, County Durham and the Tees Valley. So quite a large operating area, and that's just for Go North East. That, of course, was born out of the privatisation of Northern General, one of the former National Bus Company subsidiaries, following the Transpac 1985. Privatisation started a year later, 32 years ago, 2 weeks ago. So just recently had its 32nd anniversary. And that was a management buyout that was concluded in February 1987, and that, for Northern General, form the basis of what we know as the Go-Ahead Group today. Obviously, many acquisitions, the length and breadth of the UK thereafter, but also in the North East. I think the most notable one is OK Motor Services, and we're still very fortunate to have a couple of colleagues within the business who came across from OK, and of course a large number that were there at deregulation and remember that MBO and how things have changed. And I'm always very taken by our industry as to how many long-serving people we have combined with the newer people coming through as well. And I'm a firm believer that you need that blend of both. It's great having fresh ideas and challenge and all the rest of it, but it does need to be backed up with that sort of knowledge and that history as well. We can't be beholden to that, we must change. The world is changing around us, but that good blend of both. And just like Reading Buses, Go North East equally has that in great equal measure, and it's something that I think everybody there should be rightly proud of, and I'm certainly proud to be part of that team. The business is probably most famous in recent times for its exotic variety of different route branding that was boldly launched in 2006, and that really came to the fore under the stewardship of the late Peter Huntley, who went on to run TAS Partnership, the industry consultancy. But we have route-by-route branding that was really pioneered on an industrial and highly visible scale in the North East, and that's something that's continued to this day. Many of the routes are in their second or third iteration of those brands now. It's not just a bus operator, we also have quite a sizable National Express coaching operation, which actually sees Go North East and, of course, now East Yorkshire Motor Services vehicles in all sorts of wild and at this time of year wet parts of the UK, such as Southend-on-Sea, for example. That's a place that I never thought I'd be running coaches to, but we do. Ongoing investment in the fleet and in the depots. So we're just building another new depot at the moment at Hounsgill in Consett to replace an ageing depot in Stanley. The past 4 to 5 years, they also opened a very sizable, impressive facility in Gateshead at Riverside as well. So it's not just about investing in the vehicles. There's a lot of investment behind the scenes in terms of training and operating procedures and systems, and of course the nuts and bolts and bricks and mortar of depot facilities as well. And then the most recent investment by Go Ahead Group that's benefited the North East region is the acquisition of East Yorkshire Motor Services from Peter Shipp. And again, that's one of the last remaining management buyout National Bus Company subsidiaries dating from '86. I think the other one is Trent Barton. But yes, we have EYMS within the fold, and a lot of history there. What effectively has turned into being a family-run business for the past 31 years, and something that we're very keen to protect the integrity of. It's a local business running local buses. And we want to make sure that it remains locally aligned. And for me, I think that's one of the great things about Go Ahead as a group, and certainly was what attracted me there from Reading, is that local alignment. Transport is local. A £2.50 bus journey in Plymouth is very different to a £2.50 bus journey in Newcastle and Brighton, and therefore the politics is different, the challenges are different, the customer's needs to travel is often quite specific in terms of the detail of shopping centre opening times and places of work and education, healthcare, and therefore local managers really in tune with those markets, delivering a locally tailored product is what I firmly believe in to be a good bus service. And that's something Go Ahead does very well, and we're going to be doing it again with East Yorkshire Motor Services. Well, in fact, we already are. But anyway, you're probably thinking at this point that his talk is called Titans, Tigers and Lions. We haven't heard anything about any of those yet. What on earth is that all about? Well, here they are, just to set the scene for a little bit more of the detail that I'm going to go in. So first of all, Titans. Well, of course, it is a Leyland Titan. This bus was one of the first buses I owned when, with a couple of fellow colleagues, we started Thames Bus in 2002 in Surrey. And I bought that bus, YJB 68T, chassis number 38. I don't know why I have that ingrained in my brain, but it was the first Leyland Titan new to Reading Transport in 1978. And little did I know when I bought that Titan from them in 2002, but all those years later, I would be running what I looked up to as being an absolutely amazing bus company. So that's the Titan for you. There we go. Superb machine. It was to London spec. They had two in 1978 on trial, and then they bought a large fleet of Reading specification ones in the years following. But that vehicle was absolutely superb. Really important part of when we started Thames Bus in 2001, and that vehicle followed me on to another couple of independent operators as well. It was that good. It still survives. It's in the yard of a chap called Julian Brown of Wildon PSV down near Wateringbury Station. It's in a bit of a state. I nearly madly preserved it at some point, but I've had a lucky escape now because I don't know what I'll be doing with it in the northeast of England. But there we go. So there's the Titan for you. Tigers. Tigers was really when I came back into the bus industry after having a bit of a 5-year break of going into rail, and I'll come on to the detail of that in a bit. But Tigers is Yorkshire Tiger, and that's a really, really exciting operation. I was honoured to be given the opportunity to get involved in finalising the acquisition from Centrebus and relaunching this really energetic and quite different low-cost business within Arriva, and that's still running today across Yorkshire and has actually expanded and gone from strength to strength. So there's the Tigers, Yorkshire Tiger, and then on to my Reading experience, there's the Lion. We had the Lion route, the Route 90 that we acquired from First Group in 2015, that we relaunched. There was this big cat theme that James Freeman, my predecessor at Reading Buses, had started with their rural routes. And everybody was expecting me to call it Tiger because I just come from Yorkshire Tiger, but we didn't, and we called it Lion. They do now have a Tiger route in their operation as well. So there we go. There's the Titans, the Tigers, and the Lions. It wasn't necessarily a Leyland-themed presentation or an animal-themed one, but just makes for a good title. So how have I arrived at what I'm doing today? Well, as Graham rightly said, I actually started my career in 2000 on London Underground. 55 Broadway, 3rd floor, East Wing. Some of them are still there today, as a trainee schedule compiler. And when I did my schooling, I went on to college. I went to Thurrock Technical College in Grays in Essex, and they just started launching a different type of A-level called a GNVQ. And I thought, well, this sounds quite good. We were all sold it that it's more hands-on and more practical, and this is the future of qualifications. And very quickly after starting off on this path of a GNVQ, advanced level in business studies, it became clear to me that nobody in the big wide world knew what on earth a GNVQ was, and this probably wasn't the best of choices. So I took the view that there was 2 ways to get on in life. One was qualifications and one was experience. And yes, no doubt later on you can blend both again. But I set off on an experience route and just thought, I'm going to apply for a couple of jobs and see what happens. And the second job I applied for was to London Underground, and I was honoured to get accepted onto their trainee schedule compiler scheme. So did that. Had already at this point got quite an interest in the industry, and I knew a couple of people, one of whom had a small independent bus operator growing in northwest Surrey, and ended up doing probably what now I would look upon in horror and say was actually moonlighting at weekends, washing buses and all the rest of it, and doing cutting duties, and actually over time, whilst the Underground was a fantastic experience for me in terms of that really, really important part of transport operations, which is the schedule. It dictates everything. It dictates what it is that you're offering your customers, how many drivers you need, vehicles you need, the largest chunk of your cost base. Everything really comes from that timetable and then the schedule that sits around it. So really, really important insight into something that's so, so important. But actually, I was finding the bus industry rather more exciting, particularly at that independent side. So when the opportunity arose to join that operator full-time, I left the Underground and went into independent bus operation. And that saw me through a situation where that operator actually was one of many at the time that was starting against a backdrop of some of the other PLCs exiting parts of the market, and in our area, the once great London and Country was closing depots and exiting routes, and these opportunities were starting to open up for these independent operators against a backdrop of some pretty interesting challenges, none more so than cross-boundary ticketing across the sort of, at the time LT Zone 6, and that was really in the home counties. I think a large cause of some of these challenges, as well as congestion. But these independent operators popped up everywhere, and not all of them were successful, candidly, and that is the nature of the market. And this particular business that I was working for, it was clear to me wasn't going down a path of success for a multitude of reasons. So I found myself in a situation thinking, oh dear, you know, I've ended up actually being quite sort of key in the office in terms of writing schedules and doing tenders and publicity and getting out there. You know, I feel as if I've got something to give, but this isn't a success that I can put on my CV and go and get a similar job elsewhere. What am I going to do? Because I'm really enjoying this and I think I can do more. And actually, at the age of 19, I foolishly, boldly, I don't know what, decided I think I can do this myself. And cobbled together some money with a couple of friends, and we started Thames Bus. And we were very successful in winning Surrey County Council contracts. We started with some schools, and evenings and Sundays. And very early on, we had this bizarre situation where we were running more buses over an evening and a Sunday than we were during the week. And people said to me, Martin, this is bonkers, you know, why are you doing all this? Now, back then, you didn't have any of this low-floor DDA, you know, Wi-Fi and smart ticketing requirements. So you could literally have a bus for a couple of £1,000, and that was sufficient. You know, paint it up and away you go. So the capital cost was a bit lower. But the reason why we secured that work so early on was that we knew that the only way we'd be successful against some of the other operators in the area was to be able to sweat the asset. We needed our vehicles working into the evening and over a weekend for us to get our costs down so that we could be more competitive on the weekday work. But we knew that those Sunday and evening contracts were only coming around once every 5 years. So if we didn't get them then and make the effort and duck and dive with part-time drivers and me driving a bus and all the rest of it, we probably weren't going to get it again. And that strategy really did work for us. Very quickly we were able to amass enough weekday work to sit around all of that, and we had a business that was really going in the right direction. Until 2003, so about 18 months later, lo and behold, we had county council budget cuts. New thing to me back then, they're for all the time now. But sadly, Surrey County Council had to consult on a pretty awful situation, which was an arbitrary cut of all evening and Sunday bus services across the county of Surrey. And it's great to see many of those routes back now today, even against a backdrop of some of the austerity that we've seen. But for us, then at Thames Bus, that was really the key to our success. Gone. And we thought, right, okay, what are we going to do? We've got some good price contracts here, but they don't stand up on their own without the whole package. So we started talking to a couple of other local operators, and that's when I got to know Steve Telling of Telling's Golden Mirror at the time. We didn't do a deal with him in the end, but we did a deal with a up-and-coming organisation called Centra. Today it's what is Ritala, and they were trying to move out of their sort of grassroots for them bus operations of car park contracts and airport contracts and all the rest of it, and get into mainstream local bus services. They had an operation very nearby at Heathrow Airport, so it was a good fit for them. So we didn't get rich in selling Thames Bus. We just about got back all the money that we put into it, but what we did was protect our investment in that respect, but also guarantee jobs as well. And for me, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, a good grounding into the whole dynamics and economics of bus operation, but actually kept me and the team in a job. And in that larger organisation where some of the overheads could be shared and we could tap into cheaper costs, Thames Bus went on to be even more successful going forward. And it's something that, you know, the team and I were really, really proud of. Fast forward to when Centra became part of Ritala, things move on, things changed. I eventually left and got speaking to a couple of guys running a company called Wiltax. They were predominantly focusing on school buses, based very much in the area of where I had been at Thames Bus, and I joined them as their general manager. And that was great. We continued to build that business up. They needed a full-time person in the business. But then the shareholders, 2007, one of them wanted out, and we managed to broker a deal to sell the business. And this time we did sell the Telling's Golden Miller. So in 2007, I found myself part of TGM. One of the big things we were into at Wiltax was railway replacement bus services. I mean, we were out pretty much every weekend. We were South West Trains' largest contractor, and if we weren't out for them, we were even going as far as Essex for, I think it was First ONE at the time over in East Anglia, and Great Western, all sorts. So every weekend we had the whole fleet pretty much out. and really developed quite a niche in not only the pre-plan work but the emergency call-out work. And at the time, rail industry was going through all sorts of challenges with new rolling stock and signalling, and we pretty much got called out on an emergency call-out at least 5 times a week, I would say. It kept us very busy, but it was good fun. And so, very unexpectedly to us who were working there, in December '07, Thames Golden Miller Group, at that time an AIM-listed PLC, was sold to Arriva. And Arriva were really interested in what we were doing at Wiltax. And it's where I met somebody who's been quite influential in my career, Bob Holland, who was then the UK Trains Managing Director of Arriva, who came down to Heathrow to meet us and actually said, look, Martin, we spend literally millions of pounds across the Arriva Trains Wales franchise and the Cross Country Trains franchise, which were the 2 train operating companies they had at the time, on railway replacement buses. And I think it can be done better. At the moment, we're giving it to a brokerage. We don't have control over the quality. You've been doing this as a bus operator. Would you be interested coming into the rail side of the business in a bit of a sort of poacher-turned-gamekeeper role, if you like? Bring your expertise from the operating side of things and give us some advice on how we can make this better. And I went on a 6-month secondment to Cardiff, and I ended up staying there 5 years. I took up the role of road transport manager. We set up a brand new team. We brought in-house all of the management of the delivery of railway replacement buses and coaches into a specialist unit in Cardiff, but not just for Arriva Trains Wales, but also for the cross-country franchise. So we were dealing with coach bus and taxi operators the length and breadth of the UK, and it was very different to what I'd done before, sitting on the other side of the fence. But we again, I loved it, and we got some really great results. We saved £1 million in our first year just by interacting with the coach operators better in terms of how we agreed rates, procured things. And there were all sorts of hidden savings. I mean, actually just getting bus people to talk to the train planners who wrote the timetables and saying, look, if you change this by a couple of minutes, we can do it with half the number of vehicles. All sorts of bits of feedback that they wouldn't have had before, because under a commercial arrangement, the companies that were doing it wanted to justify as many vehicles at as much profit as they could. Whereas we were able to actually take a bit more of a sort of Arriva corporate view, do the right thing, do it efficiently. And we rose the standards. We were very clear on the types of operators that we would use, no vehicles older than 15 years, unless people were prepared to send us a photo, and we thought that they were okay, because there are plenty of vehicles out there that are decent, but there were quality standards and controls put in place. And that team is still going today, and again doing great work, and for a wider portfolio, because of course Arriva then went on to be acquired by Deutsche Bahn in 2010, and that meant that at the time, Tyne and Wear Metro, Chiltern Railways, London Overground, they all joined the Arriva fold as well, and we just acquired Grand Central, the open access operator. So we were certainly kept busy. In 2010, when Deutsche Bahn acquired Arriva, I started getting involved in rail franchise bidding as well, and bringing some of my expertise not only from rail replacement buses but also things that I'd seen from around the rail business, and taking an interest in other teams into franchise bidding. And I actually got involved in some of the integration of the DB TOCs coming into Arriva Trains and trying to get it to be a little bit more of a consistent family. So doing some things like setting up benchmarking so we could share ideas across the group. With Chiltern doing something really good that Arriva Trains Wales could learn from, or cross country and vice versa. And that was a fascinating experience for me, to have an insight into pretty much all parts of a train operating company, but also thinking from a bus perspective. But that path really led to rail franchise bidding, which is an interesting concept, because you can find yourself, if you're not careful, spending years and years and years writing hypothetical plans and ideas and cost, none of which will ever come to fruition unless you win a bid. And for me, I suppose it was probably a little bit too academic towards the end. I missed the cut and thrust of being close to real operations rather than sitting in an office. Those thoughts in my head probably hadn't been completely articulated until I was given the opportunity to go on a secondment for the 2012 Olympic Games, where Arriva's bus division used the suppliers from across the UK that we'd set up for the railway replacement operations to deliver some of their Olympic game coach operations. And I spent a couple of weeks in a coach park next door to Heathrow Airport. We had a few challenges that also meant I didn't have any sleep for 2.5 days throughout it, which some people might have thought that would be enough to put me off it for life, but actually far from it. I came away from that really with the bug to actually say, I need to get back in the bus side of the business. That's where I want to be right now. And so started hunting out opportunities across the group to get back into bus operations, and there was an opportunity to become commercial director at Arriva Yorkshire, and that was all agreed, and I moved. Didn't faze me. I'd already moved to Cardiff and had 5 years there. So to move to Leeds, that was, what the hell, let's do it. But actually, that role ended up being a commercial project of just one, and that one project was to conclude the acquisition of what at the time was Centre Bus Holdings in West Yorkshire, and then take charge of the business, integrate it into Arriva in the right areas, but keep it lean and mean where we needed to preserve the integrity of it as a low-cost unit. And yeah, it was a great opportunity to come back into bus. And for me, I suppose, having had all that experience earlier on in my career of the sort of harsh realities of running independent bus operators, even things about having to worry how much cash you've got in the bank, being exposed to the whole 360-degree picture of a bus operation, which I would recommend to anybody setting out on a career of actually really trying to make it in buses, because you do get to see and experience everything, and there's nobody there to sort of mop up after you. The buck stops with you. So for me, that whole having to take responsibility for things in a 360-degree sense, combined with the sort of lean and meanness of independent bus operation, but having by that point done 5 years in the PLC, I thought was a great grounding and a good blend of experiences to say, yeah, I really want to do this. I think I can make a great job of launching this business in a way that's very, very different to a traditional Arriva bus operation. And we did it, and we set up the brand, and I'll never forget when we did the work with Ray Stenning on the branding. I know he's come to talk here before. We set him a very clear remit. We said, right, well, the buses at the moment are orange and blue. We don't think those two colours go together very well, but the orange is the prominent colour. So we're going to keep orange. We want to keep it single colour paint because we're a low-cost unit. We don't want to be having to do fancy paint schemes and accident damage and the rest of it. So the only things you've got to play with, Ray, are stickers. So do your best. It's an orange bus with stickers on. What are you going to do? And we're a low-cost unit. We're not Arriva, but we are kind of Arriva, but we're not going to talk about Arriva because we're a separate business. And yeah, he came up with this tiger idea, and I genuinely thought we were not going to get this through the Arriva board. They're not going to sign up to this. This is so bonkers in comparison to traditional Arriva branding that they're never going to go with this. And it was a very easy sell, actually. So yeah, Yorkshire Tiger was unexpectedly born, and we had an awful lot of fun with it. But the serious side of it was that we made a profitable business from that. That was an 8% margin business, which in low-cost independent operator terms is a very good return. And it did exactly what Arriva wanted it to do, which is get market share back in the tier of the bus market in West Yorkshire that's predominantly the contracts and the less remunerative commercial services. Find a way of operating those profitably, sustainably, but protect the more profitable traditional operations that the group had in that area. And the two sat alongside each other and complemented each other really, really well. And I think nothing demonstrates that more so than having had a Competition and Markets Authority inquiry immediately following the acquisition, where not only did they impose a lot of temporary restrictions whilst the review was being undertaken that said, look, you've got to keep these businesses separate. Well, it was like, well, we were going to keep them separate anyway, so nothing changes. But actually having got through the other side of that, and them endorsing that, yes, this wasn't a lessening of competition, this was a complementary market, and the two businesses could work very well under common ownership, but pursuing very different strategies. So that was Yorkshire Tiger, and I loved what I was doing there. And unexpectedly the phone rang. First time in my career the phone has rung with a headhunter, and they said, we've seen what you've been doing. Have you heard that there's a vacancy at Reading Buses to be for chief exec? And I laughed down the phone, because at that point I'd been back in the bus industry for a little over a year. This was all new, as far as I was concerned. I was actually just sort of reintegrating myself back into bus society, if you like, having spent 5 years in the wilderness of the rail industry, as it would have been perceived by bus people. And they said, no, we want to talk to you about this. And I said, well, look, I've just come back, I'm just settling down, we're just getting into the swing of things. No, we really want to talk to you about this role. So I slept on it, because Reading Buses has long had a fantastic reputation as a multi-award winning business, bucking industry trends for revenue and customer growth, has the freedom and flexibility in its model to do some pretty innovative things. And James Freeman, who was my predecessor there for 7 years, big shoes to fill. But over that following 24-hour period, I reconciled in my head to think, well, hang on a minute. It's actually not too dissimilar in size terms. Yorkshire Tiger was 125 vehicles over 4 depots. Reading Buses at the time was 160 vehicles over 2 depots. So a bit bigger, but less sites. And actually the biggest similarity was in the model, because Reading Buses, being a municipal, was arm's length standalone from its shareholder as Reading Council, and of course Yorkshire Tiger, because of how the model had been set up from Arriva, was effectively arm's length standalone from Arriva. So there were huge similarities in terms of the workings of the business. So that probably left the most daunting thing, which was how on earth do you fill the shoes of somebody like James Freeman, having done all the things that he'd done there. But I thought, well, you've got nothing to lose. Let's go in for the process. Let's see what happens. And yeah, I got it. I didn't expect to get it. I was so proud and honoured when I got that job. I was driving back from a CILT board meeting with John Carr. Wasn't in the car, but I think you'd been at the board meeting. And I had to pull over into a lay-by and get out and do a jump in the air because I hadn't expected that. And it probably is, second to getting the role at Go Ahead, probably the proudest moment of my career. And for me, actually, yeah, in terms of the setup of it was kind of a sideways move, but it was a big move in terms of profile and opportunity, and a chance to try and do some new and different things that possibly you can't do in some of the more traditional PLCs, because we've got shareholder returns and things, and a municipal bus company has to be profitable. It has to generate enough profit to sustain its services and keep its shareholder happy. But you can, I think, take sometimes a bit of a longer term view on things, and Go Ahead, to be fair, are very good at taking a longer term view on things as well. But for me, I suppose in my head it wasn't going to be a career for life, but it was probably a 2 to 3 year opportunity to go and do something different, have a fantastic experience, working with a great team, try some new things, and let's see where that leads. I loved it that much that I was there for 4 years, longer than I expected to, but was at a point that I thought, well, when the right thing comes along, I will know. I'm not going to actively go out there searching the next job, but when the right phone call comes in or the right thing's advertised, I will know. And I 110% committed to Reading Buses right till the end, and probably beyond. Truth be told, I still care about it now, and occasionally people get the odd text and tweet from me. They probably want me to just go away. They hate it. But anyway, there we go. I'm slowly letting go, although tonight might be my final parting let go as I give you some detail of some of the stuff that we did there. But what happened was the Go North East role came along, and again, what a fantastic opportunity. A lot bigger in terms of size, combined with East Yorkshire Motor Services getting on for over 4 times the size, vast operating patch, but also back in a PLC, back in an organisation that you've got the support and backing and the capital investment, the access to group resources, specialisms in terms of HR and technology, and some of the commercial specialisms. But a bigger job and a bigger challenge as well, and one that I'm absolutely relishing getting more and more involved with the team there. So yes, here I am this evening, very unexpectedly again, because I didn't expect it when I signed up to come and talk to you, to be the managing director of Go North East. But the single biggest reason why I am there is that cultural fit. And I touched on it right at the beginning about local bus managers being empowered to deliver local solutions to their local markets. And I think that's so important. We don't see it everywhere across the UK bus industry, sadly, but where we do, it tends to be really successful. And for me, somebody who's so passionate about the bus industry and public transport, I would only go and work somewhere where I really truly believed in the model that I was working in. And for me, Go Ahead is an excellent fit, and therefore it was a no-brainer to take the opportunity. And culturally, the ethics and the principles behind it, very similar to what we had at Reading Buses. So yeah, there we are. So that's the insight into how I'm here and standing in front of you this evening. What makes me tick? What do I really care about? Well, I've talked a lot about passion for public transport, but actually, from a business perspective, 3 things. The people, number one, first and foremost. Always, it's all about the people. I have an analogy that says you can have the best tools, the best plans, the best facilities. They're all completely pointless if you haven't got the people and you're not engaging with the people in the right way or inspiring the people in the right way. So for me, we are a fantastic people business, and I am immensely proud of and very passionate about our people and getting involved with them at all levels of the organisation. I've held a PSV licence for pretty much the bulk of my career, and I will be driving a bus this weekend. It's the first time I've driven a bus under Go North East, but I think that's so important to keep in touch with reality. There will be things that I will see and learn and think about on the front line that I won't see from behind my desk. I mean, I'm paid to sit behind my desk, and that's where I'll be a lot of the time. We're out and about with stakeholders and so on and so forth. But equally, I think getting out there and just keeping in touch with reality and interfacing with staff at all levels is just so important. So people is number one on my list of what I think is important in the industry. Second thing is about innovation. The world is moving at a rapid pace of knots, and we're seeing huge changes in terms of how people shop and how people work, and how we get around as well. And we have to innovate as an industry. And I think probably since privatisation, we spent the early years sort of coming to terms with the model, and there were some really exciting, innovative things that were done in the late 80s and early 90s, some of the stuff with minibuses, and you look back at how they were promoted and how we engage with our customers, really innovative stuff. But I think all of that sort of settled down, and then we've had a bit of a sort of cost focus, and more recently people have been getting back on with, how do we evolve the model, how do we engage with stakeholders, for example. I mean, I think some of the accidents of history in certain parts of the UK about how we've not engaged as an industry with our stakeholders is probably where we have had some of the challenges that we've had in parts of the UK. I say that as Martijn Gilbert, not as a representative of my employer, as I think my employer is very good at it, but others aren't. So we've got to change. We have to change, and the world is changing faster now than it ever has done before, fueled by the smartphone generation and the technology that sits behind that and how it's applied to public transport. And the last thing is about promotion. We have to get out there and tell our good stories, and that's not just about for customers, that's also about trying to attract people to work for us, good people to work for us as well. I used to get a bit of jibing at Reading Buses to say, Martijn, you're always in the trade press every week. What's all that about? And we say, we're already interested in the trade press. This is all of our PR machine that's focused on the local press, that's telling the good news stories about the great work of our employees, showcasing, role modelling people so that others in the community say, I'm like that person, I could be doing that job. That's quite a decent job coming to drive a bus. They're doing a really important, valuable thing. We just happen to copy all the press releases to the trade press, but the PR machine there, very much designed for the local community to raise awareness, yes, of buses and to get more people on board, but also to get the political and stakeholder support and to get people to come and work for us, good people to come and work for us to showcase their work. So it's all very well doing good things, but we've got to talk about them. So promotion is really important too. So just going to run through now some of the things, those of you who went on the visit to Reading Buses earlier this year, just to tell a little bit of the behind-the-scenes story about some of the things that we've been working on there over the years. My successor there, Robert Williams, who's joined from being the Commercial Director of Stagecoach Exeter, South West, that's the one. He's now in the chair, and I know that he's carrying on with a lot of the hard work there that isn't about me, it's about the whole team, because it really was a team effort within the organisation. I think when you went, you were hosted by John Bickerton, the head of engineering Goring and Dan Bassett, the head of operations. And again, them alongside Tony Pettit, Chief Finance Officer, and Caroline Anscombe, HR Director, it is a team. There is no one person there that's singularly driving the visions. It's a shared vision, and it's great to be able to see that carrying on thereafter. So what did that all look like? What is that from a sort of management and business perspective? Well, of course, number one, it's all about customers. And the huge focus on making sure that everything that organisation did was absolutely designed about customers, getting more people on board, and retaining their customers. So getting that all-important satisfaction score. So everything from the culture that we had within the organisation that drove a customer service focus at all levels with the drivers, through to some of the innovative stuff on board to trying to make the bus a better place from an ambience perspective, modern engaging environment, everything down to social seating and digital connectivity, through to good quality customer satisfaction, sadly all too often undermined by congestion, mind, and the awards that were celebrated very publicly, again, about a customer focus and getting the message out there that the buses in Reading are good and it's a service you want to use. That customer focus, yes, it does have to be number one, because customers are our sole purpose of being. We have no business if we have no customers, and of course customers pay our wages. But in my book, that needs to be very quickly followed up with a strong focus on recognising, rewarding and supporting the people that really make it happen, and that's the workforce, particularly those on the front line, because they're closest to our customers. And that should be a two-way process. That should be with the feedback and ideas and issues coming back as well. So we did lots around the whole recruitment and training piece. I inherited from James a sort of recruitment mantle that was people who like people. We didn't recruit people because they had a driving licence or enjoyed driving. We recruited people who liked people. And the bulk of Reading Buses employees came from hospitality, care homes, high street retail type environments, and then the training academy gave them the technical aspects of how to drive a bus. What we can't train people in is to like people, and that was very much at the forefront, and still is, of our recruitment strategy. And then making sure that we look after these people once they're in through the door. Train them well, recognise their hard work, give them the right facilities behind the scenes. I mean, we even had a gym in the depot, the canteen, we had a cycle to work scheme, employee benefit scheme, and we had regular communication as well. Quarterly staff forms with open questions and answers from myself, annual staff surveys. These things are so important, and when you're recruiting in that pool, which I think is really where we want to be as an industry, the people that have got the great customer service skills that we see on our high streets and in hotels and restaurants, we have to think, well, hang on a minute, what does working for these organisations look like? What does working in the Apple store look like? How do we make the world of public transport more like that? And that's very much what drove us in that. Then thirdly, the vehicles, they are our tools. They are the public face of the organisation beyond the people. It's the bus that you see coming towards you. So making sure they've got the right ambience on board. We're using the latest materials. We're keeping pace with trends, public space trends, coffee shops, shopping centres, so on and so forth. Yeah, we shouldn't be thinking of these things as luxuries on board buses. They're essential. You look at how a shopping centre has changed in terms of its ambience, or a coffee shop over the years. They're public spaces, and buses are just the same. So really important that we're keeping pace with those trends, that we are making them look desirable. They are products that people want to be seen on. It looks modern, stylish. We've got the right route branding. We're communicating the customer message clearly, and of course we're keeping pace with the latest fuel efficient and environmental technologies as well. And Reading is well famed for its use of compressed natural gas buses, for example, where the gas comes from a carbon neutral biomethane source. That's something they've been at since 2013, before I arrived in the organisation. But for that business, with the investments it had made in the infrastructure, it worked, and it continues to this day to give really good results from a cost point of view, from a low carbon point of view, and from a reliability point of view. But also, gas doesn't work for every solution. There was also investment in the latest Euro 6 diesel powered vehicles, including things with the start-stop engine technology as well. Revenue and ticketing. I mean, you heard me talk right at the start about the importance of the schedule, and that's how we really start our foundation as a bus service. It's the offer. But then how we get people to connect with the offer is by buying a ticket. So making sure we've got the right fares, we're recognising changing social demographics, people staying in education longer, how we need to support young people into their early years of employment, but also how we want people to transact with us as well is so important. So at Reading, we had the Boost Young Person's Fare scheme, where providing you had an ID card from any education establishment in the area, you got the child rate fare up to the age of 21, and that was immensely popular. And we have something very similar in Go North East. We have a £1 flat fare for those up to 19, and again, it's great because young people are our full fare-paying customers of the future, and we have to, if we're going to be successful, not only just take for granted that they haven't got a choice to get on the bus, but try and retain them when they get to that car test driving age, because actually they're having a good experience, and we're the best way to get around because we're more convenient, we're comparable or cheaper to the cost of parking, and that it's easy to transact with us. And that's why things like the mobile phone, barcode ticketing, contactless ticketing, again, is really, really important. And another key important strand for Reading buses was growth. The area around us was growing at a phenomenal rate in terms of the Sparks effect of Crossrail coming, the railway electrification scheme, and talk of a Heathrow third runway. So really important that the bus company kept pace with that, but also costs were growing. And the only way as a municipal bus company, which has a very tight financial envelope, because the strategy for Reading buses was that its profits were reinvested to provide socially necessary services. So for us to be able to keep running all those services, and some of them have been an increasing challenge over recent times, and meet growing costs in terms of wages and fuels and insurance, we've got to grow, we've got to be more profitable. So during my time, we won the West Berkshire Council contract for all the bus routes in and around Newbury. We set up an operation in Slough. We managed to renew the Vodafone corporate staff shuttle contract, very prestigious contract in and around Newbury. We continued to grow our existing services through various investment initiatives. We did lots and lots of railway replacement work because, as you heard earlier, it's something I like and I'm a big fan of. And we did some internal efficiencies as well. But we had quite a pace of growth within the organisation that's continuing to this day. But we also were making sure that we were investing in our future. Making sure that we were using technology in the right way, but also working with our suppliers and pushing ourselves beyond traditional industry channels to really get involved with the latest thinking, so with students and with start-up businesses as well. So we actually invested in a little corner of our office. Those of you will have seen it that came on the depot tour. We had our own technology lab, where we gave over a corner of our finance office as what they call a co-working or accelerator workspace, where we could invite students and young startup businesses into our organisation and say, look, you've got an idea that you think is going to work for us as a bus company, great, we'll give you a place to work that's got, light, electricity, Wi-Fi, everything you need. We'll give you access to our data, we'll even give you access to a vehicle if you want it, and we'll give you some support and mentorship as a management team, because we want to work with you on your ideas, because we want to hear what they are, and we want the first mover advantage of being the people that benefit from this thinking. And even though some of the project, some of the projects that we worked with people, and they're still working with them on, absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure will increasingly help change the industry. But even those that you weren't quite sure of, just to have the opportunity to hear the latest generation's thinking, what was important to them, what do they like to see, how do they like to transact, how do they like to talk, but also, candidly, changing people's perceptions of our industry as well. And one of the best things we did with that, working with the Department for Transport, was a thing called a hackathon, this DFT hacks. And this is a concept for computer programmers where they tend to go away for a weekend, be set a series of challenges that a particular industry is facing, and they will literally code through the night to try and find technology solutions to some of these challenges. And the DFT, with an organisation called HackTrain, set up the first multimodal transport hackathon in the UK, and John Bickett and I got involved. and it was over a weekend, so from a Friday evening through to a Sunday, and we hosted it at Reading Buses. We're completely bonkers. We turned the workshop upside down. We put in tables and chairs and Wi-Fi points to have 40 of these young people come into our depot and spend the evening there working on their transport solutions. So the guys that had signed up to this, all these young bright things, had signed up to a grand welcome in a posh London hotel. They then had some time with a train operating company. They'd then been in the swish offices of the trainline.com in London. And then they saw on their agenda that they were going to be picked up in 2 double-decker buses and whisked off down the M4 to come to a bus depot. They weren't looking forward to that. But when they got to our depot and when they heard what we were doing and saw what we were doing, all of them, councillors, said, we just didn't expect it to be anything like this. This is absolutely fantastic. We've really enjoyed it. And it helped change those people's perceptions of the bus industry because they saw that actually a hell of a lot goes on behind the scenes in bus companies. We are quite modern and dynamic and open-minded in our thinking, and we do want to work with people like this, and we do want to change, candidly, because we have to. So that was really, really helpful, and there's some great projects that are coming out of that. That will keep on developing, and it's great to see that as Go Ahead Group, we have a similar, albeit much bigger, initiative now, something called the Billion Journeys project, that Go Ahead Group is investing in because it recognises the importance of keeping in touch with these changes and really being at the forefront of it. The other areas about the communities that we serve, buses are very local. I used to use a term quite regularly in some of my early presentations about sort of social glue, because the bus is really often the only thing that connects all the different parts of our communities. Yes, you've got utilities like electricity or gas, but they're pretty faceless. They don't have a personality. You can't really talk to them. You can't even talk to a call centre most of the time these days. They only do it online, don't they? But buses are out there and they are connecting all of our communities, the housing areas, healthcare, education, shopping, leisure. So it's really important that we keep in touch with the communities that we serve. But yes, we talk to all of our stakeholders, the politicians, the local enterprise partnerships, the chambers of commerces, the big businesses, the shopping centres, but also actually day-to-day parts of the community that really touch and change people's lives. And things like Charity of the Year partnerships that we had at Reading Buses are a really important part of that. The annual open day, and I do encourage you to go to it. It's normally the last weekend of July every year when the main depot at Great Knowledge Street opens its doors and invites all sorts of people in. And actually, I would probably say, whilst there's plenty of things there for enthusiasts, they probably only account for about 10% of the people that go. The other 90% are actually, bus users and people interested from the community that want to come in and see behind the scenes, see how the control room works, how they maintain buses, have their face painted, have their name put up in lights on a LED destination display, have a ride through the bus wash. It's just huge fun at a nice time of the year and a great outreach piece of the communities that the company serves. But various other things we got involved with. There was a festival in Reading, and they wanted to do a drive-in movie on a bus. They came to talk to us and said, we've got this crazy idea. What do you think? We said, yeah, fine, do it. Great. Because this is an opportunity to get buses out there in front of people that wouldn't traditionally use them. This is a chance to change people's perceptions, raise the profile of the organisation, and hopefully get some more people on board. So yeah, we're going to do it. So here we had, I think, probably the world's first drive-in movie on a double-decker bus. Well, actually, it was that popular. There were 2 of them there. And then even things like when we have an Olympic hero in the region, let's paint a bus gold, let's get him down, let's get him to launch it, let's celebrate this as a community because it is so, so important. And yep, Chris Mears won gold in the Olympics for diving, and local lad lived on, I think it does still, his family still live on the number 2 bus route through Burfield, so there we go. So that's all the sort of day-to-day stuff that I'm really passionate about and I think is really important to running a successful bus company, and of course keeping on top of the finances, making sure we're keeping our costs in check, making sure we're trying to keep fares affordable. But also we've got to have a vision. We can't just stand still, and the technology piece leads into that. But actually there's got to be a vision that's aligned to how the region is changing, what sort of funding is out there, what's happening politically, what's happening economically as well. And we did an awful lot aligned to the growth of not just Reading, but Berkshire as a region, making sure that we lobby to get buses mentioned in some of the plans of the Chamber of Commerce and the Local Enterprise Partnership and on politicians' radars, that we were talking to developers of new housing and new office accommodation and University Science Park and the like, and that we were painting bold visions for public transport that people could get behind. And nothing does that more so than the plans for the mass rapid transit scheme, where over time the local authority in Reading have been very successful through the LEP in securing funding to put down dedicated segregated bus lanes. Great way of easing the passage of the bus, providing all the traffic lights work around them as well, but that's another story. But actually we're saying, well, yeah, this is great, but we've got to take this to the next level. That's the tarmac and concrete. What is the long-term bus infrastructure like? How do we make this a real transformational experience that actually, yeah, we're going to have this bus whizzing past people in their cars, but actually it needs to be something that really turns heads. And that corridor was growing to a point that actually, extra capacity is needed as well. And so the company has now, for about the past 18 months, been actively pushing a vision of a tram-like mass rapid transit scheme. You may have heard of Glider that's just started in Belfast, and very similar tram-like bus scheme to really just change perceptions again, get the capacity on board, and get more people using buses, making it a even more desirable means of getting around. So that pretty much comes to the end of my sort of Reading Buses journey. I mean, just to say, an awful lot happened in 2018, and I left at the end of July. I think one of the biggest things was taking on the Green Line route from first Berkshire. And that's something that the company had a good reputation, still does have a good reputation of doing, by taking on services that others haven't been able to work, and perhaps rethinking them a bit, rethinking the local focus, the local stakeholder engagement, taking a little bit more of a long-term view on investment. But this has been a really big thing for Reading Buses in the past 12 months. That started at the end of December last year, and just by getting out and about, talking to some of the tourist attractions, some of the travel agents, people like National Express, the Green Line Travel Centre, and rethinking how it's sold and communicated to customers. It's got its own app, it's got its own more dynamic fares pricing policy, and the dedicated, motivated team as well, that actually that route has already met and exceeded expectations, so much so that there's now 5 new double-decker buses on order for it, and that was the catalyst for actually Slough Borough Council engaging with Reading and has led to the establishment of a depot in Slough as well. So some very exciting things going on there. I think Reading really is on a fascinating journey. The whole region of Berkshire is having been broken into unitary authorities 15 or so years ago now. Actually, it is things like Crossrail, like the electrification of the Great Western Railway main line, and Heathrow's third runway that's really bringing back together now a bit more of an alignment and consensus on a vision for the region. And so as a result of that, Reading, being the county town bus operator, is increasingly now on a journey of going from being a local bus operator to a regional bus operator. And it's had the depot in Newbury since it bought it off the B line in 1991. It's now in Slough. And then one of my final actions was to work on an acquisition. And just shortly after I left, that acquisition finally concluded, and they now own Newbury and District buses in the town of Newbury as well. So again, it's continuing to grow and really continuing to establish itself as a pan-Berkshire regional bus operator rather than just a county town of Reading bus operator. So I am immensely proud of all the stuff that's gone on there. I set myself a challenge when I took over from James Freeman to say, look, it's going to be real hard work just keeping up everything that he's done. But actually, I don't want to stop there. I want to go beyond that. And I think as a team, they've certainly done a lot in that direction, and they will continue to do so. But I'm leaving them to it now, and I'm in the northeast of England, And it's been great this evening to not only tell you my story, but also look back on some of the great things that the team and I were able to do there. But yes, I'm into a new era, a different part of the UK, not one I'm terribly familiar with. New colleagues, new owning group, new focus for me as an individual, but really proud to be part of an equally award-winning and high-achieving team. And again, the things that I'm talking about in terms of Go North East here, very similar to some of the stuff that we were doing at Reading. They are absolutely essential services that connect communities. Without the bus there in that North East regional community, people won't be able to get to work or to education and the like, so really important. The company has a really strong partnership approach with its stakeholders, with Nexus, for example, and that's backed up with ongoing investment. The group is really putting its money where its mouth is in terms of fleet renewal, investment in properties, so on and so forth. So a really committed partner in terms of delivering good, strong public transport. And of course, it's not just a bus company, it's actually the third largest private sector employer in the northeast of England. So Go Ahead as an organisation there has a really important role economically, not just through connecting communities and helping keep the wheels of the industry moving and helping support the growth in jobs and housing, but also as a major employer. And I think that's something that the bus industry is often not as good as it could be in terms of communicating to stakeholders, because lots of people's livelihoods depend on buses as well. I mentioned earlier that cultural fit. We are very much supported and empowered by the Go Ahead Group to do the right thing locally for our customers and our employees. Strong focus on the innovation and future transport models. I mentioned earlier the Reading Buses Lab, and I was delighted to learn that Go Ahead had a similar project, and it's called the Billion Journey Project, and that's a slide from a recent presentation with our Chief Executive David Brown. They're hearing from the first round of cohorts for this year of startup businesses and students with all sorts of really exciting transformational technology ideas of how to improve transport. This is bus and rail, of course, but that's good because we need to be more integrated and multimodal as a profession. And yes, just for fun, we also have the excitement of East Yorkshire and Scarborough District in the mix too. And I didn't know that when I signed up for the job. That was an added surprise. But it's a great business there that we've inherited from Peter Shipp and his family. And really wonderful team there doing some great work. And we're just getting going now on investing there. Weekend just gone, they've had brand new state-of-the-art ticket machines launched. They can now do contactless bank card acceptance and QR barcode ticketing. We've got a dedicated area director going into the business. He joins us from December, and we've got lots of exciting plans and the things that we would like to do once we've got the right people in the right places and understand the right things to really take that business to the next level as well. But everything we're doing really strongly aligned to the regional economy, that's good in terms of being out there with the partnerships, but also it's quite tough. The economy in the northeast of England is not in the same boom state that Reading was, and we benefited hugely at Reading Buses from that. The work of the bus company wasn't an automatic given with the growth of the economy. Actually, the modal share of buses in Reading was outstripping the growth of the local economy. So the work of the company was delivering a lot of benefit, and it's that added value of what a bus is doing rather than just riding off the back of what is happening to the economy, but actually what a bus company is doing in terms of the product and promotion and price that's delivering that growth that I'm really keen to focus on in the northeast of England. But of course, we do have the same challenges elsewhere in the UK on things like congestion as well, and that's really the single biggest challenge facing the bus industry at the moment, and it's not just the fact that congestion is there, it's the unpredictability of it and the highly variable nature of it that means that it's a real challenge to offer customers a dependable service day in, day out. Yet we know that despite all the excitement of investment in vehicles and facilities and marketing, what's really important to customers is a bus that turns up on time, friendly driver, clean, the basic hygiene factors, and this really strikes right at the heart of one of the core foundations of us being able to deliver, any bus operator being able to deliver bus services. So a big area of focus, but we will continue to work in partnership with people, raising not just the problem, possible solutions as well. And of course, the bus, as the most efficient use of road space, is in itself a very important part of that solution. So that's it from me. Hopefully that was interesting. I know we're going to take some questions. Just to say, I was asked by John to come and talk about my career, and I wanted to sort of say that I couldn't really have done, and still can't do, any of the things that I do without the people around me, without the team. It really, really is about the team. And I've spoken about a couple of proud moments this evening. One was getting the job at Reading Buses. One was going to Go North East. But this photo here, which I think is probably the one that amplifies the most about the importance of team, was following us winning UK Bus Operator of the Year at Reading Buses in 2015, where thanks to Alexander Dennis's innovative quick-release glazing, we were able to quickly pop some windows out of this lovely double-decker bus. But we got a number of people from all over the business, from all the different teams together, just to take this wonderful photo that I will treasure for eternity, to say, look, this isn't about any one part of the company. This is everybody working together as one team to deliver a successful business and great services to our customers. And that is absolutely everybody, from the drivers through to, well, they're all on here: drivers, managers, cleaners, shunters, fuelers, payroll and IT and finance team, training academy, commercial team, engineers and technicians, control and driver management teams, and then the directors and shareholders. But don't worry about them. They're the real workers for everybody else on that photo, aren't they? But those important words at the bottom: one team working together to achieve our vision to be the very best at what we do. So there we go. That's it from me. But I can't finish on a Reading photo because I now work for Go North East. But as I'm in London and at the LT Museum, I thought I'd put some Route Masters up, and there she is, RMC 1510. And that was just before the wonderful Imber Bus event earlier on this year. And if you've not been, you must go. I shall be there year after year after year. Otherwise, Sir Peter Hendy will have a go at me if I'm not there with my Route Master. So there we go. But good. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. I think that was a fascinating talk, not just here about your own personal development and philosophies, but also at a time perhaps when public transport and transport doesn't always get the best press. Just shows you what you can achieve with inspirational management, team building. I think that picture at the end of the Reading Buses and involving everybody and involving your stakeholders, and that just shows what can be achieved if you just follow these principles and keep to them. So fantastic stuff. We have time just for a few questions. Has anybody got some questions for Martin? Right, shall we start at the very back and we'll work our way down, try and have some structure.
Right, very interesting, thank you. Lovely picture. That's not what I wanted. When you say you took over East Yorkshire,
Yes.
Was that the Ship family, did you say?
He was indeed, yes. So Peter Ship has now retired. We still talk to him. He still keeps in touch, which is nice because he's a really important part of the history of that business. But yes, it's East Yorkshire Motor Services. That was acquired by Go Ahead Group earlier on this year and is now part of Go North East.
But is that Peter Ship and his family still running it, or have they exited?
No. Peter Ship has retired, so it is run by Go North East Management, and we have a new chap called Ben Gilligan joining us at the beginning of December, and he will be our director to lead that business.
Yeah, because some years ago I remember seeing a film on television about the East Yorkshire. They say they're one of the last independent family companies. Yes. It really went. I think they had a route master running as well with them, and it was so interesting because it was family owned. So I was wondering if it was the same. Obviously, yeah. Yeah,
it is that. It is that business, and anybody.
There.
If anybody watched on the Yorkshire buses, many of the other stars of Stage and Screen do still work for us, and that's really good. But I mean, yeah, that family business point that you make is so important, and our challenge is to preserve the integrity of East Yorkshire Motor Services as a local business, but with all the support and backing and expertise of a PLC. But I'm absolutely determined, and so is the rest of the team, to we need to keep that business doing the successful things that it does. That is a bit more of a challenge than when you have a private owner, in a family member. But I think it can be done. Reading Buses had a very family feel about it, yet actually it was owned by a council. So there's no reason why that can't be replicated in a business like East Yorkshire. But sadly, they sold the Routemaster and exchanged it for a Bristol low-decker, much to my disgust as a London boy.
Oh, no. Stuff of nightmares. Oh, thank you. It's brilliant.
Next
Thank you. Good
question
luck.
then.
Thank you.
It's a bit further forward.
Thanks for your talk. Very briefly, I was looking at some of the dynamics you were speaking about in Reading and your desire to take some of those to the northeast. I'd really like to comment that having worked in the northeast, money has gone into Newcastle and Gateshead, quite a lot of money, to bring it to a very different standard of thinking, behaviour, finance, etc., 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 economically. I'm not sure that the model that has been successful in Reading and indeed in Berkshire will be directly applicable to the areas of the northeast which are not highly invested. And I'm wondering how you're going to adapt what you're thinking in order to have a service which meets the needs of poor areas, agricultural areas, and particularly ex-mining communities where confidence is poor and going a distance on a bus is a major activity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, and please don't think I've come here this evening to advocate a one-size-fits-all model. I mean, in Reading buses, for example, the Newbury operation was completely different to the Reading operation and is predominantly rural into some very isolated communities. It's a challenge. I'm not coming here this evening with the answers to that, but what I am saying is that my eyes are very wide open to the fact that there are different markets within that market. It is a far larger patch. There are some very wide economic and social differences between the business, between the various parts of the operation. But I think in terms of the principles that I set out, people, well, that absolutely does apply across the board. We have absolutely got to make sure we've got the right people in the right places and we're supporting them and recognising and rewarding them. So that definitely stands. Innovation and technology, well, things are still going to change. Yes, people in some of the communities that you've spoken about might not be so demanding of some of the, or excited by some of the technological changes. But having said that, vast numbers of people have got a smartphone now. Actually, is this a way of getting better information to customers in those communities, or smartphone type technology? I mean, railways always used to be fascinated by a sort of light version of a help point that was a mobile phone, effectively, rather than something that's hardwired in and costs a six-figure sum. And I think there's sort of light technology solutions that we can deploy in more rural communities to make the bus easier. Equally, some of the analysis that's done behind the scenes using what is becoming known as big data to better match capacity to demand and meet community needs and so on and so forth, I think does have a place. So I don't think that we can say that there isn't space for innovation in how those services are delivered. If anything, there's probably a greater need because they're the more challenging ones to deliver, because there isn't the volume, there isn't the intensity, they're less frequent services, they're less well-used services. So how can we keep those services out there, and how can we deliver them more efficiently against the backdrop of some of the challenges? So I think equally technology innovation applies. It might not be the same technology and innovation, but it absolutely applies. And then my third one is about promotion. And again, if we can't get out there and tell people about them, they're not going to know about them. So yes, they definitely need a very different focus to a high frequency, intensive urban service, or some of the bigger interurban services like Durham, Newcastle, for example, the Castles and the Angel 21 and X21. But the core principles and the things that I get excited about absolutely should be applied to those services as well. And I'm not going to be sitting there with all the answers. I've got an exceptionally experienced team around me, many of whom have been there for many, many, many years. And they are in tune with the differences of those markets, and we certainly don't take a one-size-fits-all approach to operating our services.
Thank you. Just a quick two-parter on the the Green Line acquisition, which was certainly a bit of an eye-opener. The first one was, what kind of gave your team the confidence that you could turn it around, given that first had invested quite a lot in that route? And secondly, how on earth did you convince your shareholder to pony up what was likely to be £1 million of new buses to serve residents essentially outside of Reading?
Okay, good point. The first and foremost thing was that prior to that, we had 2 examples of taking over routes from said operator that hadn't worked for them, and we had been able to get them to work just by giving them the local focus, some re-engineering on timetables and fares, but also the branding and the promotion point. So just sort of pressing the reset button and rethinking and re-engaging had very successfully really revitalised the Leopard corridor, which came under the Reading Buses auspices under James Freeman's days. So out to Wokingham and Arborfield, that had not directly, but in time been a first service that had gone through being a council contract that the company had been able to take on commercially and revitalise. And then in my time when we bought the old 190 Reading Bracknell service that we relaunched as the Lion. So we already had within our sort of experience or armoury, if you like, 2 good examples of where we had taken services on and been able to transform them. But actually that wasn't enough. Key building blocks for us were, one, we were in a position as an organisation where we knew we needed to continue to grow and look at new profitable opportunities. We knew that the strategic importance of Berkshire as a region, Thames Valley as a region, was no longer just about Reading. It was wider than Reading, and therefore areas like Slough and the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead were increasingly within our sort of area of strategic importance. And the 702 Green Line absolutely is a local bus service in those areas. In effect, actually, it's bringing tourists into the area for Legoland and the castle. It's also a local bus route for people going shopping, and it's also a commuting service of people not just commuting in London, but commuting in those local areas. So it did have a strategic fit. But I think really the overarching points were, different operators have different priorities, and I wouldn't want to be talking out of turn about other operators, but we could see that service in recent years had been phenomenally successful. It had gone from being a route that had traditionally always had second-hand cascaded vehicles onto it. It was revitalised with new branding, with the rainbow fares, the dynamic pricing, very energetic, locally driven marketing, to a point that by 2014, it justified investment in brand new vehicles. So it had been a success in recent times, and I don't think it's any accident, going back to my points earlier about locally empowered and locally focused management, that actually that didn't exist in that part of that organisation anymore. That had moved away, it had been regionalised, and there wasn't the focus locally on that Green Line service from a locally empowered team. And the proof was in the pudding that when we started getting out to talk to stakeholders, many of them hadn't heard from anybody for at least 4 years, if ever. And it really, for me, just amplified the importance of maintaining those local relationships. So we sat there and thought, right, we've done this before, twice, with a similar type of service. We can see that there's recent success. Something's gone wrong, something's changed, and we think we know what it is. We think it's being run now from quite far away and hasn't got the same local focus. It's in an area that does touch on strategic importance for us. And actually, I mean, you mentioned a figure of £1 million. Actually, it was very low risk to start with. We at the time were going through some efficiency programs in our fleet. We had enough vehicles to pretty much take on the 10 PVR. All we had to do was get 3 extra vehicles in, and we had to move at lightning speed. We didn't pay any money for this service. They deregistered it, and we decided to take it on commercially. But we did it in such a way that actually we didn't tie ourselves into any long-term capital commitments at all, and it was very much a case of, let's give it a try. We've got 7 buses here that aren't doing anything. If we jiggle stuff around the fleet, we can get the right vehicles that we need. We're 3 short. I did a deal with Stagecoach to hire 3 of those horrible triaxle coach-seated Scania things that were a bit of a disaster with hindsight, but on paper it worked and it got things going. That was our only capital commitment, really. And candidly, it was a case of let's do this for 3 to 6 months, and if it doesn't work, we'll come off. And we haven't really lost anything. All we've done is paid a bit of rent on some hire buses, and we've got some new colleagues that we can redistribute elsewhere across the business. So we weren't tied into any big capital commitments to take that operation on. And actually, the challenge we set was to say, right, we must see break even by Easter before the school holidays, and we need to get it to a point that it breaks even outside of school holidays as a minimum, and then it makes lots of money during the school holidays with people going to Legoland, and obviously they've had the bumper year with the Royal Reading. But it was ahead of where we expected it to be by Easter, and that gave us the confidence to say, yeah, right, let's do this properly now, let's start painting more vehicles, let's think about a longer term strategy, and that's what's led to the order of new vehicles as well. So it was a combination of history, low risk, opportunity, and then ultimately numbers that made the case to the shareholders to do it. But the shareholder and the strategy of a municipal bus company like Reading isn't solely focused on a year 1 or year 2 payback. It's very happy to say, look, there's things going on economically in the region, tactically. As long as we can see that we're going to be in a good place by sort of year 3, year 4, this is an investment rather than a short-term let's get money in ASAP type operation. But actually, it's doing that. It's performing for the organisation. The new route, the second route that came in, is a little bit more interesting. That came out of an opportunity to replace first on the Dedworth to Windsor corridor, which very disappointingly attracted some competition. How on earth you can think that a route that didn't work for one operator is going to work for 2, I'll never know. But we were there first, and we held our position. In the end, things got a bit silly, and we said, look, we need to change this. So 703 was a little bit more speculative. That was born out of coming off of the Dedworth Road and seeing what else we could do with the resources, and also trying to make 702 a little bit more focused, because really the section beyond Windsor to Bracknell really is a local bus service, not a Green Line route. So the 703 is fulfilling that objective, and it will be interesting to see how the 703 continues to evolve. I think the other thing that's a little bit awkward with the 703 is, of course, it was all focused on reinstating a fast bus down the main road to Heathrow, because first withdrew that in one of their various changes, and lo and behold, as soon as we at Reading Buses chose to fill it, they decided they could suddenly justify reinstating a commercial service along the main road to Heathrow Airport. So the 8 and 9 is some interesting competition for that service too.
We've probably got time for one more question. Has anyone got it? Right, Joel, you've been patient at the front.
Again, like everyone else, thank you very much. 2 questions, if I may. Oversimply, what did Reading do right that Transport for London have done wrong? Because the passenger numbers have gone up in Reading on a broadly similar ownership and operation structure, even though it's deregulated. But in London, with the same central ownership and route planning, it's got wrong. And the second point is the elephant in the room, electric buses.
Yes.
You talked about alternative technologies, but how are they going to work in a deregulated environment?
Okay, all right. So first things first. I mean, I think the London situation is very different. There's lots of other factors at play there in terms of traffic speeds, in terms of apportionment of highway space to different modes, and the level of I think commercial focus, candidly. I mean, we've seen TfL in recent times start trialling route branding again and some of the customer ambience features. And I think those things are very much in their early stages of maturity, and who knows where they'll go. Reading Buses will put its success down to being, hyperactively focused on the local communities that it serves, and is fortunate that the geographical makeup and the size of it means that the company can do that. I think you probably have to go back to the 1991 breakup of London Buses into lots of different opcos to get that level of focus in a London operating regime from a commercial perspective. So TfL's having to do with a far bigger area in a little bit more of a centralised area. So is there that commercial focus and understanding that brings out some of the more entrepreneurial traits of special fares and pricing and partnerships with communities and all the rest of it? Probably not. I think then the second one is, the customer focus in terms of the facilities on board, the ambience. it's been, and some would argue that it rightly is, a mass transit system. It's not about trying to deal with eccentricities or surprise and delight features here. It is a functional mass mover of people. And that's what you see in most other European cities and beyond. I think the difference here is that we're some would say blessed with a deregulated model outside London that shows us there's a different way of doing these things. But of course, the single biggest difference is the operating framework that sits behind it, and the decision was taken when buses were privatised to retain some central control over London's bus network, and that I think has meant that it's not been able to take advantage of some of the more dynamic thinking that maybe some, but not all, let's be honest, of the deregulated environment has. But there's many successes of London's bus network, and I think we have to equally be open-minded to the fact that the way people travel is changing. And there is growth in walking and cycling across London. Is that a bad thing? We don't necessarily have to look at buses in isolation. Of course, the single biggest thing that's undermining it always road speeds, and that actually is absolutely. So I don't think there's any one factor there, and I think it would be wrong to talk about necessarily solely focus on different models. There is a whole variety of factors there, but we can't get away from the fact that the journey times are bonkersly long now, and we can sit in traffic for ages and ages and ages, and who wants to do that when actually walking and cycling can be quicker. So yes. But of course, road user charging has come in London, but the cost of that hasn't kept pace with economic increases and. So I'm not an economist or a city transport expert either. I'm sure there's better equipped people in the room to answer that question than me. But electric buses, now you're getting me fired up. So I think people know Reading Buses was one of the first operators outside London of hybrid buses. 31 of them secured with some Department for Transport funding, as are most electric vehicles, all electric vehicles in the bus industry outside London, because they're so expensive you can't justify buying them commercially yet. But those costs will come down and are starting to come down. And Reading caught a bit of a cold with them because they were expected to have a battery life of 7 years, but only came with a 5-year warranty. And by year 5, it was clear that actually many of them were on their second or third battery already, but albeit thankfully at the cost of the manufacturer of the electric system. So a big liability going forward. It's one of the, Reading, like all bus companies, is facing a number of challenges, but the cost of keeping that hybrid bus fleet on the road is a big challenge, so much so that 50% of the fleet was converted to diesel operation over the past year. But only on parts of the network where we knew we were cascading Euro 5 vehicles to replace older Euro 4 and Euro 3 vehicles. So overall, we were still giving an emissions improvement because we were replacing the hybrids with Euro 6 gas vehicles, so that was still a step forward in emissions, releasing Euro 5 hybrids that became Euro 5 diesels that were then replacing Euro 4 and Euro 3 diesels. On the routes where we weren't doing a cascade, we have taken, or I don't work anymore, they have taken out another 5-year warranty on them, which is very expensive. Now at the moment, that's put that organisation off of buying electric vehicles for quite some time. It's made a substantial investment in compressed natural gas, which many of you saw when you went to the depot, the big gas station. The infrastructure cost of that is getting on for £2 million. So it is wedded to a gas strategy that is really working for that business. Fast forward to where we are though today on electric buses, the technology is getting better, and it's only if the industry actually does take the leap of faith and invests that the manufacturers are going to get the research and development, the thing's going to get better, more experience, and improve. So we are now sitting here with manufacturers who are presenting to us increasingly less hybrid vehicles, but now full electric vehicles that are getting on for being able to do a full duty cycle on an average bus route, and ones where they believe that the batteries, or indeed they're starting to have the confidence to underwrite a decent tenure on the batteries. I've been fortunate to have an insight into some Chinese bus operations recently with some of the manufacturers over there. And they have a little bit more of a throwaway society, that their electric buses are designed for 7 years, not just the battery, the whole bus. So that's why that's the culture that they have there. That's the economic model that they have. We don't have that here in the UK. Maybe we should. Maybe that's another way of making the bigger picture costs of electric buses sustainable. I think it is going to get there. We are already seeing phenomenal improvements year on year. We've got the trade show at the NEC this week, later on this week. I'm aware of at least 2 manufacturers that will be making big announcements on major leaps forward again on electric bus technologies. At Reading Buses at Slough, we trialled the Yutong. I know its sister dual door vehicle has been in operation in London. We were really impressed with it, really impressed. It did a full day in service, and obviously I think the elephant in the room, as you rightly used the term, is that we don't really know about the batteries, quite frankly. The Reading Buses experience says big scars, huge cost to the bottom line. They haven't lasted as long as people expected them to. But we have now got manufacturers who are prepared to put their money where their mouth is in terms of extended warranties and fixed price battery replacement schemes that are trying to give the confidence that the battery technology is improving, not just only in capacity, but in longevity as well. So I think it will come, but we're not there yet. But we're only going to get there if we keep doing some of it.
Thank you very much. I mean, again, probably we could debate this long and hard all night, but I'm afraid we've got to call proceedings to a halt. So can we thank Martin once again, please? Thank you very much for coming. See some of you at Acton on the 15th of November. Thanks very much.